Do you ever wish that time could just slow down? Well, the good news is you can make that happen. Hey there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shirvin and I'm a licensed therapist. I started this channel as a creative outlet to share what I've learned as a therapist and to talk about mental health in an easy to understand way. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, but lately I've been thinking about time more. Specifically about where and how I've been using my time. And I don't mean this in terms of productivity. Now I know this might sound existential, but I've been thinking about whether I'm feeling fulfilled with my life. And time is definitely a part of that equation because it's something that's so finite. I know this can be overwhelming to think about at times, and what has helped me is slowing down. You might be thinking, how can someone slow down time when it's something that exists as a constant? Have you ever had days where it went by so quickly because you had so much to do, didn't have time for a break, and it was just one after the other? Or on the other hand, maybe you were out enjoying something and you didn't pay attention to time and suddenly you're at the end of the day. On the contrary, you've also probably had days where it went by so painfully slowly because you were maybe dreading something or you were so bored and had nothing to do and it just feels like the day won't end. It's interesting how time seems to slow down or speed up depending on what you're doing. I've started to take note of how I use my time, and I thought I'd share how slow and intentional living has helped me feel more at peace, even if I'm still doing a lot. I also want to point out that a lot is subjective. What I mean is everyone has different circumstances and responsibilities, but at the end of the day, what we could all do is listen to what you need and what works for you. So what fills my cup and what I might talk about today might look different from what fills yours. So it is important for you to have a better understanding of how you might operate, how you might recharge your batteries, and really think about how you can embrace that slow and intentional living despite having different responsibilities and being busy. What really frustrates me is that society has painted this picture where the busier you are or the more you hustle, the more successful and hardworking you are. While I agree that if you're working a lot of hours or fine-tuning your skills, there is some truth in that being diligent and hardworking. But what I don't really agree with is the opposite. That idea that you have to be a certain way where you're working hard all the time, you have to hustle in order to get what you want, or you're seen as incapable or lazy. And unfortunately, we're taught to do this pretty much the moment we're born. We're taught to be in this mindset of hustling, of doing the next thing. Ever since I could remember, I've been taught to perform. If you think about it, in the first 20-ish or so years of your life, you're focused on hitting so many different milestones, and you pretty much have a syllabus through each of those stages of your life. You are told, okay, you go to kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school, and hopefully maybe university or some kind of post-secondary. That's the type of framework that a lot of us have grown up learning. And you're just focused again on hitting those many different milestones that you end up building this expectation of always wanting or having to do more, always having to move on to the next thing. So after you finish school, you have that pressure of finding a job or having your life figured out by 20. You would get graded throughout your years of school and be told that those numbers are a representation of who you are as a person. There was no time or care for mental health or for discovering neurodivergence or maybe accommodations if you had challenging circumstances. It was all about fitting this really narrow time frame that the society has set out for us. So when are you going to have the chance to slow down or be intentional when your whole life, your first 20 years, you've learned that you always have to be so go, go, go? For me, I've always been a go, go, go kind of person and constantly juggling multiple things at once. I was volunteering and working the moment I could because I was told I needed to have extracurriculars and experience to get into post-secondary. I was constantly surrounded by the pressure and idea of having to perform or having to set myself up for success, for stability and security in the future. Culturally, it was always really instilled in me to think about my reputation, to save face, to make sure that I could be someone that my parents would be proud of. And it makes sense that if this is the mindset you're taught the moment you're born, you begin to feel guilty or lazy when you're not being productive, or if you even want to take some time off. This is also how my perfectionist and OCD tendencies started to build up. I began to think in the mindset that everything needs to be done in a certain way, in a certain time, or at least to completion, or it would be a reflection of my ability if I couldn't get it to that level of perfection. So on top of the external pressure I was already experiencing from my parents, the cultural values that I had in my family and from society, I started placing internal pressure on myself that was unreasonable, that was unkind, and I lost my own voice of care through all this pressure. Actually, I used to do something called the time inventory, which is basically where I would look at the 168 hours we have in each week. And I would note down how many hours I would be spending on all the things that I would have to do. For example, let's say I would average 7 hours of sleep a night. 7 times 7, that's 49 hours a week spent on sleep. Work would take me about 40 hours a week, etc. Everything was categorized and I took inventory of that. While this practice has been helpful for me to better understand how I use my time, I realized it was mostly used as a productivity tool, so I could see where I could use other time to be more productive. I don't really do this practice anymore because it's something that I did so often that it's something I do mentally now, but mainly because I was able to take a step back and instead pay attention to where I spend my time now, instead of just how or how much. For me, what's helped over the years is having some kind of structure and routine. It definitely contributes to being more present and intentional, because when you're not spending extra time thinking constantly about what to do next, but having an idea of what you can expect, that's going to take away some of the mental load. For example, it helps me to plan out my meals a week in advance so I have the groceries I need and I'm not scrambling each day thinking about what I'm having or what I have to make. That's all planned out and I don't have to use the extra energy and time to think of something different every day. So it's almost like you're offloading some of that work where you do it all in the beginning, spend maybe 30 minutes to figure it out for the week. So you're not spending that 10, 15 minutes each day scrambling and trying to figure that out. It also helps for me to have my meals around the same time each day. And I try to make sure I can do this by blocking my calendars so I don't get bookings around those times. And that's actually another way for you to set boundaries, where you might have, let's say for me, absolutes, like no sessions after 7 o'clock at night, and I need to make sure I'm prioritizing time for meals and movement. I used to plan things like, let's say, going to the gym and meals around my work, around social activities. But the moment I started to plan things around my fitness and meal times, I noticed that I was telling myself, hey, your needs matter and you can have control over how you want your time to look like. So rather than saying, okay, I guess I'll just move my gym to this day, or I'll do it at this time instead so I can make time for this person. I've put my foot down and I've said, okay, this is important to me. Maybe rather than meeting at 5 o'clock on this day, we can do 6 o'clock or find a different day that works for both of us. While I would love to accommodate others often, it also meant that I was sacrificing my own needs by doing that. There can be a balance. For instance, there might be times where I have to take that 8 o'clock session because it's the only time my client could do it that week and I have free time, so it wasn't really extra work for me or didn't completely throw me off balance. Or maybe there was an odd weekend where I had to work through my lunch hour and have a later lunch. These situations happen where we're thrown curveballs or unexpected things pop up, and that's okay. That's part of being flexible, accommodating, and resilient. But the thing is, it's just a matter of how often you're allowing that to happen, how often you have to practice being flexible and accommodating to the point where your structure and your routine is completely gone. That's when it becomes a problem where we stop taking care of ourselves. Since time and energy are finite resources, I've really tried to embrace that slow and intentional living. I started to think about what were the activities that filled my cup, and I started to also cut out the ones that took more energy away from me. Things like spending time doom scrolling on social media or being around people who made me feel more exhausted than energized. Before the pandemic, I never really went on walks because they felt like a waste of time. And I remember telling myself that I could be doing something else. Maybe I needed to study something or read something, or going to the gym would be better for my fitness and exercise compared to going for a walk. But over the past few years, I've really took the time to go outside and connect with nature, which I felt was a silly thing to do in the past. I literally look like an Asian grandpa with my hands behind my back, my eyes closed. I feel the sunshine and the wind on my face, and I really just taken that deep breath in. And when I do this, these are the moments where I realize time has stopped, even if it's just for a short moment, and I feel so incredibly re-energized. The moment where you're telling yourself nothing else matters right now but how I'm feeling, my senses, what I'm seeing, what I'm tasting, what I'm touching, what I can feel, what I can see, what I can hear. When you start paying attention to all these things, nothing else seems to matter, even if it's just for a few seconds. And in a world where we're always being told to go to the next destination or go do the next thing, go get your next degree, we forget to pause and just enjoy. We forget to enjoy the world that's around us. Slow living has helped me to also use technology in a way that serves me. I did a cleanse of the accounts that I follow, and I find it easier to start and stop using social media after a short period of time without being hooked in and constantly just scrolling automatically. This is a form of being intentional or being purposeful with what you're doing instead of just doing things automatically and without thought. I remember telling myself in the past that I needed to be constantly working on some kind of goal, and I would measure how good of a friend I was based on if I was checking in on friends all the time and making plans. I wasn't paying attention to how I recharged my batteries and just kept giving and giving and giving. I am actually quite an introverted person and prefer to spend time with small groups of people or have one-on-one hangouts if I needed to catch up or see other people. I don't really have plans every single weekend anymore, and this is something I do on purpose. Even if I'm technically free, I try to space plans out so I ensure I have time to recharge my batteries by spending time alone and doing things that are re-energizing and healing for me. I've learned to enjoy spending time with myself, whether it's curled up on the couch reading a book during the middle of the day, even if it's only for 10 or 15 minutes. Doing this puzzle has been really healing. Or if it's unwinding with the candle, some tea, and binging a show on Netflix for the night. As I've gotten older, I have other responsibilities, and I know that's the same with my friends. Relationships have changed over the years, and it's not really a bad thing, but it's more because we're all realizing that time and energy are finite resources. I appreciate that my friends are low maintenance, and while we might not see each other or speak regularly, I know that I can always reach out to chat and vice versa. We need to do things that make sense for us, just like how our friends are doing things that are making sense for them. Slow and intentional living have also pushed me to try new things. Since I'm able to be in tune with my energy levels and how and where I'm spending my time, I actually have more time to do things that matter to me. I've learned some new skills, like signing up for a 3-month pottery class. I picked up volleyball and pickleball, and I've continued to binge TV series because I love getting lost in visual stories and just having time where I can shut off my brain and just mindlessly pay attention to something else. For me, it has helped to create some kind of framework or structure in my week. I work 8 to 4 most Monday to Fridays, and then do some private practice in the evenings and most weekends, which can sound busy. But outside of that, I make sure I eat at my set times. I incorporate a few days of exercise, and I spend the rest of my time doing things that are creative, healing, and re-energizing for me, rather than trying to pack every single bit of free time that I have with something productive or around people. And don't get me wrong, maybe being around people is what energizes you, so that's what I mean. It's paying attention to what you need and what serves you. I hope that you can also take a moment to pause and reflect on how and where you use your time. Are there activities that you can reduce or cut out if they're no longer serving you? Has there been something you've been putting on the back burner because you haven't been able to prioritize it? Routines can change, and that's okay. What's important is that you're listening to yourself instead of just doing things so automatically and robotically without intention or care. Remember, you matter, and you get to decide how that will look like for you. Thanks for coming along with me today, and I'll see you next time.